Hi, this is Tom for PokerVIP.com and welcome to the first part of a four-part series of me playing Pot Limit Omaha on Betfair. Um, so we've covered some Betfair stuff in the past. I've done a series here before, and John is also taking part in this bankroll challenge here at Betfair. So it seemed like a good time to jump on some tables at stakes he would be playing or should be playing with his bankroll and kind of illustrate the style that we would play in this instance, what we, we'll be doing in several spots. It's obviously a reasonably small sample over 4 videos. It's going to be about 2 hours of footage, but just showing the style, which is going to be pretty exploitative, very value heavy, not too bluff centric, because people at this limit generally don't fold too much, and yeah, just basically playing an exploitative value heavy style, not really being particularly GTO. We'd be introducing balance and more of a GTO style at PLO100 and the likes. Even at 50, wouldn't be too balanced. So yeah, with that being said, hopefully we'll jump in, find some really interesting spots, and yeah, kind of illustrate the style that we'll be playing at this stake. So we're not going to be completing any kind of junky hands. We're going to be trying to keep out of position play down to a bare minimum, and just really exploiting when we have strong hands, range advantage, and the like, and just value bet our top of range hard and hopefully get some value off it. So yeah, right hand table we're going to be following the ace jack. It's not particularly connected, the suit's quite low, and out of position versus a UTG open, it's not going to be doing particularly well. So no reason to get involved with a weakish ace out of position. Also, I've played on this site in the past. I know Gold Digger plays 50. He's one of the better players on the site. So of all the people I would be mucking about with out of position, he's probably lowest on this list out of the two tables that we have presented here. It's a little disappointing that he's got position on the left-hand table, but shouldn't be too much of an issue, hopefully. We're going to be folding the sevens. I'm going to be ISO raising on the right-hand table with a reasonably good double-suited hand. Over limping is just going to be a bit weak, and we're looking to exploit weaker players, and by limping he's showing us he is one of the weaker players. Likely checking the 10 back. I don't have many redraws. It's quite a dynamic board, so betting can lead to some issues on later streets. And I think just taking showdown here, we never have any flushes in range that check flop. Occasionally our opponent has Queen X which checks through, but otherwise we're okay. Making the 2 pair. Going to be folding here with 4 people jack behind. Just going to be taking showdown on my 2 pair. There's a reasonable chance it is good. Indeed it is. And our opponent shows up with, as we fold here, yeah, he's limped in single-seated sixes, and that's kind of illustrating what I mean by a weak player playing wrong parts of range, playing it weak by limping, and yeah, just generally overplaying and playing the kind of hand that is rarely going to make the best hand. So these are the kind of players we're going to be looking to exploit, and if we don't get a particularly special flop like the 2-heart flop we just got, then just playing it reasonably snug in position, taking showdown is absolutely fine. There's the possibility of going for a very, very thin value bet on the river, but there's enough stuff that's going to be checking, like ace queen, king jack, that kind of stuff. 2 pairs straights that don't necessarily want to bet because of the possibility of weak flushes, but are never folding. So we could potentially value own ourselves there. If I think my opponent's capable of calling down any 2-pair combos, then perhaps we can fire, but I don't really have any information on any of the players, with the exception of Gold Digger and the 2 tagged green players. On the left-hand table, there is a color coding system on Betfair, much like any other site. My green tag basically means I don't think that they're particularly strong players. There's all sorts of different tags. I really haven't played on the site a huge amount, so my color tags are not as extensive as they are on other sites. For example, like on PokerStars or on BetSafe, I've got a very detailed tagging system, and that's just helpful to kind of keep me up to date with what style I should be playing against certain players, whether I play balanced against someone, whether I think somebody else is a bit weaker so I can play exploitative. and notes as well are going to greatly help what I can and can't do against those kind of players. So left-hand table, we are going to be opening button if it is folded around to us. It's a little disappointing we have quite a few short stacks. We would preferably be wanting to play 100 big blind or more in every spot. Playing against short stacks is just altering the stack to pot ratio and not necessarily in our favor in this instance. As it is, we can open the button and more than likely fold to any 3-bets that's coming. I don't expect the green tagged player to have a 3-bet. Gold digger can. He's certainly proficient enough to recognize when he can profitably. Again, limped. We would have been raising this anyway. But we will be aggressive with our single-suited, somewhat connected aces. We have position. We have a low SPR, which actually favors aces in this instance. We get re-raised. We are going to be putting the money in. Good luck, us. Nothing more really needs to be said. He gets it in with the other aces. Seems fairly standard. We had a very, very slight free roll on the flop, but nothing too major. I suppose he technically had a free roll to the running queen jack as well, but my outs were at least live as opposed to runner, but still somewhat greedy to want to win every aces versus aces spot. I will gladly take the chop. Ace 9 6 5. We're not completing the action. We're out of position with a weakish flush. It's not as connected as you think. Again, facing an under the gun raise. Again, pretty comfortable fold. If it's a big blind, we can talk ourselves into defending there, and it would not be a terrible defend. We'd much prefer it suited the ace, of course. But in the small blind, with a hand that doesn't play particularly well multi-way, where we're incentivizing the big blind to overcall, it's not going to favor us too much. Limped again. Going to ISO again. Don't really need to go particularly large here. We have a gut shot, couple of backdoor straight draws as well. Just going to bet fold flop, I think. He's going to fold a decent chunk of range. That's somewhat disappointing from that point of view. 6 also kind of screws up our straight draw, and that's making the worst straight possible. The 6 does complete some parts of range, makes some awkward 2 pairs for him. Happy enough checking back. I don't really see any reason to turn this hand into a bluff. I don't see any 2-pair combos folding. I don't even know if they're proficient enough to fold a 9 here. I highly doubt my hand is good. He called with a 4. Sure, why not? Seems like a day ending in Y. Needless to say, the limp with the Jack 4 10-8 single suited is fairly atrocious. But there we are. Going to be folding the moderate strength queen. No real need to play that. Going to be raising the 4s on button if it's limped or whatever in front of me, which is going to be folding. Plays fine as a raise. On the button, where we're going to be raising about 50% of range. The limps are obviously kind of complicating things. We can't quite raise. We can't treat the limp as if no action has happened before. We can't raise quite as wide as we would do otherwise. We can still attack, we can still isolate, but we certainly can't raise a 50% range and expect to, 1, get respect, and 2, show a profit. So we're going to have to be a bit tighter. I'm still not going to be that respectful of it, but we do want a slightly tighter range than we would be opening. So, for example, if we're opening 50% on button, we're going to maybe tighten it to sort of isolating 30 to 35%. We're not going to respect it as much as, say like an open raise where our cold calling range is going to be significantly tighter. I've really been experimenting over the last few days of trying to implement a strategy where I'm basically either folding or 3-betting pre. There are some calls in range, but significantly sort of reducing my calling range and expanding my 3-bet range. And it's been going reasonably well, so I'm trying to really cut down on sort of overcalls. There are going to be certain types of hands where that's still going to be a profitable play. But in general, kind of 3-betting more and also folding weaker parts of what I was cold calling. I think it's in general a reasonably good idea. It's still something I'm trying to refine down to sort of perfection. So yeah, sort of not cold calling as much as I was. Um, this ISO raise is not a pot raise. It's not particularly strong. It seems like he's just protecting his limp. I have a hand that plays pretty well. I also have position over both players, so we are going to isolate. It is on the aggressive side, but I still think reasonable. The only concern I really have is if Zozera decides to re-raise me, in which case he has aces and kings and not a great deal else, in which case my hand plays particularly poorly versus those parts of range, so I will be folding. But I think isolating here is totally reasonable. By not raising pot, he's not showing an enormous amount of strength, and we just pick up pre, so that's kind of nice. Not having to win, contested is generally going to be a pretty good result, and the fact he's now limping shows us that he is perhaps a little bit on the weak side himself. I can understand why he's isolating the limp. It makes perfect sense. He's kind of protecting his post as well, which, in general, if we're playing cash, we're not going to be posting. But if he's going to do it, he kind of has to commit to it, pot it, not incentivize people to overcall. He's offering them a greater price, greater odds to call, and secondly, not allow someone like me in a bit of a cheeky mood to come over the top, because I'm sensing weakness, and I have a pretty good hand anyway. It's far from the loosest isolation play I've ever done in my life. It's certainly going to be profitable, as long as we're prepared to, react to any sort of strong plays back at us and adjust. Very interesting. He limped kings there under the gun. Not exactly sure why he'd ever do that. It's a very strong hand. You want to be getting money in. But something to note, he at least is limping balanced. He's not just limping the weak parts of range and raising others. So I mean, at least if you're going to have a limping range, I guess having a balanced limping range is probably better than being hopelessly exploitative. But still, if you have a hand that strong, raise it. To quote PokerStar's god-awful marketing campaign, raise it. Give me folding fours. Hypothetically, you've got limp round, and we obviously have to see a flop, but we wouldn't be thrilled with it with a weak pair, potential for set over set spots and reverse implied odds. As it is, we can just fold, which is totally awesome. I mean, I guess in this particular instance, we would have happened to flop a jack, but it's still a rubbish kicker, and we can't put a huge amount of money in with jack 4 anyway, so even being results orientated, it's not quite as good as it looks. 10-10-9-6. Barring some 3-bet shenanigans, I can defend this from the big blind. It does actually get raised. So FH is actually like he limits a certain amount, and then he's raising certain amounts. So I think he's probably going to be raising strong parts of range. If these were bare tens, I'd probably be folding given the multi-way nature of this pot when it's somewhat connected. We're a bit more interested. We flop a set. Quite like FH to check and someone else to go in, so I don't have to play the full 100 big blinds with middle set. That being said, there are enough combo draws, etc. I can exploit. When everyone else is checked, they basically cap range, unless someone's getting really creative with 3 kings, which I highly doubt, which can put the money in. With middle set, our opponent can have worse sets, worse 2 pairs, draws, or the flush variety, or the straight variety. They miss their outs. It's always nice. Always nice when a set holds. And microstakes PLO is, in a way, kind of simple like that, as in make good hand, get paid, pretty much. It's not a hyper-complex strategy. It certainly is not as complex as a balanced strategy when playing high stakes. But sometimes the simplest things work, and that's probably a good example of that. Sort of people tend to call down like far lighter than you expect. I've had that quite a lot when I've been sort of doing either sort of training videos or if I've jumped into a Zoom pool just for like half an hour or so. I coach people at this stake, so occasionally I do jump into pools just to get a feel for what the games are like, so that the feedback I'm giving is relevant. And I'm always surprised by kind of people quite willing to call off with bottom set, call off with sort of third nut flush, etc. So kind of the point I'm trying to make is blocker bluffs that make a far sort of more efficient and effective at higher stakes. Don't really have such value at these stakes just because you're going to get called that much later. It's not to say you shouldn't do it at all. It's just pick your target, That's why note taking is so important. Be aware who it's going to work versus, and be aware who's the kind of player that's just going to call down with any two-pair combos, or chase the 6 high flush and call off when he hits it, which sounds crazy and is crazy, frankly. But those players exist, and you have to be aware to where that you have to adjust versus those play styles. And yeah, you can be very exploitative against some people. Even if you're playing an overall balance strategy, you can still be exploitative against certain people. I used to play Hold'em up to 100, and when I was playing there, I played an overall balance strategy. But against certain people, like the weaker 20% of the population, I'd be playing a very exploitative style, just because they're the weaker players and you can get away with it. So it's not the one case that you just have one default style that fits all, that you just play in at a certain stake. You will obviously adapt versus different players and adjust. And yeah, just sort of pick apart the faults that are in certain people's games. Some people are going to have more obvious glaring errors than others, and some people are going to be a bit more of a puzzle and take a bit more thought process, study, analysis to sort of work out what they're doing, why they're doing it, what their thought process is, and whether what they're doing is good, bad, indifferent, etc. And that's why sort of note taking, I'm not playing with a HUD right now, but I would be playing with a HUD if this were normal stakes I play, my bread and butter games. Why something like Hold'em Manager or Poker Track is so good. Just tagging the hands that are interesting, going through every month or so, just filtering through basic position stats. What is my c-bet percentage looking like? Am I overfolding in this certain spot? What's my PFR in every position, and how does that correlate to the range I think I should be raising? And just just going through that and making sure that you're not making too many grave mistakes, and where you are just making the tweaks, little adjustments. Everyone has their own little foibles. Going to be folding double suited jacks under the gun. If this were a bit more connected, like Jack 10-9, Jack 10-8 would be raising, but the 7 and 3 don't really have any synergy with jacks, so we'll fold. But yeah, coming back to the point, everyone has their own foibles. Everyone develops their own bad habits, and it's just keeping on top of them and making sure that you're not falling into bad habits, and that you are progressing and improving as a player and adjusting. And that's why I touched on earlier that I'm kind of exploring in detail what was in my cold calling range, and whether I can move some of it over into a 3-bet range, whether I should adjust some of it into a forward range, what can still be considered a profitable cold call, and just going through that sort of stuff, and really running various simulations in programs like Odds Oracle or Poker Juice or whatever else you want to use. And yeah, just focusing on that particular one aspect that you think needs a bit of refinement, and going through it with a fine-tooth comb and trying to pick it apart. And there's going to be times when you experiment and your experiment doesn't work, and that's the nature of the beast, and you will be a better player for it. Anyway, back into these games where not much has been going on of late, hence my somewhat rambly but hopefully interesting segue. Going to be 3-betting here with a very nice hand. Given a small blind range, it's going to be wider than it should be. If it's limped, oh good golly, am I going to raise you? It's pretty good flop. We tend to have far more aces than our opponent. As it is, we actually have middle pair and a queen jack 8 draw. All sorts of straight draws abounding. Gonna call, turn a flush draw to go with it. If I had 3 aces, ace 10, 3 9s, etc., I would be potting, so I will be potting with this part of range for the sake of balance, and also by calling his cat range and is representing somewhat of a weaker range that is going to have trouble calling this. I always regret saying that because they inevitably do, but never mind. He has gone in the tank. Score 1 for the good guys. It's always nice when you say they have trouble calling it, and they actually do. People do tend to surprise me sometimes with just how wide they are willing to go to a war with, but given I have range advantage, a pretty damn strong hand, and some good draws if the worst occurs and I do get called, I'm absolutely fine with throwing the kitchen sink at that, and I'm going to be firing any brick, river, and needless to say, the clubs and straights that come in. The only real scenario in which I consider myself in a bit of trouble is if a club comes off and my opponent leads, which is going to be quite the interesting one. Needless to say, if the king or the queen comes off, that reduces the combos of flushes I'm beaten by. It also depends on sizing. If my opponent suddenly pots, alarm bells will go off. I'll probably end up folding the thing, muttering under my breath as I do. If he third or half pots, then he can be firing worse flushes, using the flush card as a bluff for the busted straights he has, etc. You know, there are going to be times where we end up paying off versus a higher flush, but one, we're getting laid a better price, and two, there's going to be enough stuff in his range that we beat anyway. Getting dealt the tripsies on the button doesn't seem like particularly good news, unfortunately. Pretty nice hand on the right-hand table. You know, in an ideal world, we want it suited to the ace, but still pretty good. We'd also prefer to have 2 hearts and not 3, but again, it's not too shabby. Going to be opening the queens in a 4-handed game. Folding to 3-bet seems fine. So it's got limped and ISO'd. With the ace and the king blockers, I'm going to re-ISO. I've been pretty tight on this table, frankly. Try to get it heads up. Going to be folding to the 3-bet here. Getting a call, getting a not all that special flop. It does tend to hit his calling range far more than my 3-bet range. Getting min bet into. Okay, that is something. I guess I put a small raise in and find out where I am. Give up if he calls. I have backdoor draws. This is a very, very, very weird play. Sure. Why not? Never be surprised by the bliss of ignorance. Opponent checks. We have a gut shot. I guess half potting and shutting down is a reasonable line. Works. It's always nice. Going to be ISOing the kings, hoping getting Gold Digger out and taking the hand with the pre-flop impetus. It's a pretty damn strong hand anyway. Would obviously prefer the kings were a little more connected, but you know, can't be too picky about it. If we get back raised, 1, it's weird, and 2, it's aces. Totally fine checking this, I think, actually. We have an open ender. It does tend to hit his calling range, and I'm totally happy for him to try and tattoo me off this hand if he'd like. Not a great turn. That said, he doesn't have many flushes here, given that he would bet a flop with them. Do block the 8-6. Still think showdown's probably the best route. Unfortunately, it's getting a progressively scarier and more terrifying run out. My opponent bets. He has some 2-pair combos, but this is seemingly a little on the loose side. Unfortunately, I don't complete my straight. Going to be checking. Going to expect him to check back a decent chunk of the time. Times he doesn't, he probably has it. This would be quite a hero call and probably terrible. Annoying. 2 ways to play that flop. Betting is fine. Felt like checking was reasonable. Let's go isolating the weaker player with a rundown again. Isolating with jacks, again, seems totally reasonable. Both seem fairly profitable plays long term. Flopping a 9, club blocker, and not a particularly good club blocker for the record, but in a spot where we have significantly high numbers of aces, betting seems absolutely fine. Turning twosies. Only really worried about ace 10, all 2 pairs have raised flop, or should have raised flop. Gonna pot turn. Can potentially hit an 8 to make a weak straight, but a straight that's likely good. Don't need to. Totally fine. Fairly good result in a spot I had significant range advantage, and a pretty good turn from the point of view every draw missed. It's actually pretty close, this one. This is one I will put in a cold call range just about. I think 3 betting's a little light given I don't have the ace of spades. The deuce hurts the hand. In a tight game, I'd actually be okay with folding this. Just from the non-nutted post-flop multi-way spots. Folding could be fine. Getting led into by the most efficient player on the table is somewhat terrifying. Really curious that the undergun raiser doesn't actually re-raise. You know, I would have thought that's a pretty obvious fold or raise spot, typically, just because this is going to happen every time. Double suited, trashy hand would be an open on button, is not an open in the cutoff. Doesn't seem like much more needs to be said there. So yeah, it's not been the most active session in the world, although the nature of PLO, it's just trying to keep pots ticking over and waiting for the good spots, being patient, picking up little spots like the 10-9, etc., and sort of just adjusting. Obviously, we had the Ace King Queen 9 spot where the guy min led, which is generally weak, but I guess in that particular instance wasn't. Not something I would advise doing, but never mind. But yeah, other than that, we obviously had the set here on the left-hand side, which was kind of nice. I'm just trying to pick nice spots and exploit them. But as you can see, like the general playstyle, seeing a lot of limps, seeing a lot of people per flop, so we're adjusting by playing hands that play very well multi-way, playing really strong parts of range, trying to isolate as much as we can. You know, especially in the spots where we have position. You know, I haven't really been overcalling too much. I don't plan to in any of these 4-part videos. Very much kind of the mindset that if I have a strong hand, I want to get it heads up and exploit an edge I have. You know, and just if you're playing in a reasonably soft game, you know, the adjustments you need to make are really sort of to maximize value, and you're going to do that by really sort of going hard with your value range, not by kind of widening your overall range, which is like a general mistake people make, that they sort of see a weaker player playing quite a wide range and they sort of overcompensate with their own sort of by widening their own range too much, and you're almost playing into their hands at that point. You know, they're quite gambly players. They like that kind of stuff. They're going to show it with parts of range you're not expecting. You know, and to be honest, they're probably better at playing that style than you, just because, you know, if they play 80% VPIP, you know, and you're suddenly adjusting with a 65% VPIP, they play like that all the time. Not to say that they're profitable, but they're used to it. Whereas, you know, you playing a 65% VPIP is obviously going to take yourself out of your comfort zone and create issues for you. We're folding on the right-hand table. A little too weak under the gun. Tight, but fine. Again, 4 is something like an 8, a 10. Totally reasonable open. 4 hurts it. And in the spot where we are going to be going multi-way very frequently when we raise under the gun. We touched on that in one of the review videos I did. I can't really remember which one it was off the top of my head, but basically, you know, in every position that we raise later, progressively we have a greater chance of the hand going heads up, or indeed, you know, having greater fold equity, because if fewer people type behind, conversely, when we're under the gun, it's far more likely to go multi-way. Which is why high card strength, connectivity, and double suitedness is so strong, and the 4 is going to hinder us in that instance. As is the 3rd club, for the record, as well. Going to be folding again, which I seem to be doing quite a bit at the moment, but all the folds are fine. Sometimes you just don't get dealt much. Need to say when the 3-bet comes in from the short stack as well. Ace 9-8 deuce suited to the 9 is not looking stunning. It is something I've seen on Betfair quite a lot, that a lot of people do short stack, so kind of adjusting versus that style and getting you know, what you can get away with 3-bets, what you can't is quite important. Limp on the right-hand table. Going to be opening the button on the left-hand table with a very, very nice hand and calling a 3-bet. The only scenario in which this is not going to get called is if it goes 3-bet, 4-bet, which is unlikely, but I guess plausible. We can flop top pair with a gut shot. Seems like a reasonable spot to bet. Opponents can potentially have better 9s, can have some overpairs, but we have pretty good ways to improve. We can also get called by hands like 5-6, sometimes 7x, 10-8, although I block that, Jack 10-8, although I severely block that. I guess there are some sort of 5-6, 7-4 rundowns that flop 2 pair and an open ender. They're partying on that flop, but that's quite a small part of range. So overall, we're doing pretty well with top pair. If we get raised, we can obviously rapidly reconsider how well we're doing with that top pair, queen kicker, and fold. But as a bet, it's absolutely fine. And again, just little probe bets, picking up, you know, not overplaying anything, not over adjusting, just picking up nice little pots here and there, and just yeah, basically just sort of exploiting, not playing particularly wild. Picking up small pots here and there, and then hopefully when a big pot comes along, we get it in pretty damn good. So yeah, we're just going to sit out the next big blind on both tables. Going to be folding. Yeah, sure. Has clicked it on both. Cool, good to know. Can have a few more hands on the can have a few more tables on the right hand table, just because we have just posted our big blind. That is actually not as good a hand as it looks going multi-way. I'm not completing action. I'm going to be out of position to 4 people. It seems really tight, and in a way it kind of is, but it's still a fold. Yeah, it's just... we don't have any nut draws effectively. You know, our flushes, we can never really extract too much value off them. Yeah, even a board like this, when stacks go in, we're likely against a 2-pair set, highest flush draw. So we're basically flipping or well up an alley in a lot of trouble. So yeah. Besides, being results orientated is most definitely not the most optimal approach to take. It seems tight, but it's fine. It's a spot I've seen John like overplay quite a bit actually, where he's sort of overvaluing that sort of stuff. And like a big blind defend, it's fine. You know, as long as it's in this relative place and you're aware of the potential pitfalls you can have multi-way, and you know the fact that your flush, if serious money goes in, is not going to be good. You know, when you're in the small blind, you've committed even less. You're getting as a result a reduced, not reduced. What's the term? A less appealing price. That's the term. You know, the odds to call are reduced. Then, well, the odds are reduced. What am I talking about? The amount of money you've already put in. So sort of like effectively your incentive to call, as I remember how to speak the English language. Yeah, the incentive to call is significantly reduced. So again, not completing action, not really a need to do it. And you know, like marginal spots like this at micro stakes PLO, you just don't need to take. Frankly, you can just take the very heavy, value-heavy ones and just exploit, which is fine. I seem to have said exploit a lot, but basically that's what you do in micro stakes PLO. You just play value hands, you play them hard, you stack money. It's pretty much the game plan. Fold it round. We're gonna open. As I say that, yet again another limp. Yet again another fold. If Paxo hadn't ISO'd, I would be severely tempted to do so myself. But taking that hand multi-way, it does not seem particularly good. And as frustrating as it is to basically constantly fold, it is, in this particular instance, the best play. So we're going to sit this hand out as well. So there's going to be 3 more parts, hopefully a little more action-laden than this one, but at least it shows that, you know, a lot of these games, like the perception is that PLO is crazy, that there's so much action that money flies around. Sometimes, you know, it's reasonably serene and there's just, you know, little spots that you just, you know, chip away at, and that's the nature of cash poker at times. So yeah, hopefully we find some more interesting spots, but you know, in a way this has kind of like been educational, just to see effectively someone just tick over and gradually produce a little bit of money. I mean, I doubt, you know, we're up like $3 or something in this session, hardly anything, but just keeping it ticking over like that is quite important. So hopefully I see you back for part 2, and until then I have been Tom for PokerVIP.com.